Hello. Well, I was thinking about something. I was driving through Illinois recently in the fall, and I was noticing it was harvest season. And I had seen my one of my best friends from kindergarten. Her husband is a farmer. It's been a multi-generational thing. And so he's been working really hard, and harvest season gets up at the crack of dawn, and he's out there on his combine, and he comes home after dark covered in dirt and sweat, and he has all of this amazing fruits of his labor. During harvest season, he's harvesting the fruits of his labor. And I was thinking about that a lot. And today what I want to teach you is that a lot of times you see the harvest, but you don't think about all of the work that it took to get to the harvest. So I want to share with you something. As I was thinking about the harvest and thinking about unpacking standards, this is what I spent some time just studying farming. I'm going to move this out of the way here, okay? So when I was with my friend and I was in Illinois, I was noticing the harvesting, the cutting, the gathering, the separating, the storing, the fruits of their labor, the work that they've been doing. But that really is just the tip of the iceberg, because there's a lot of foundational work that has to happen in order to get to the harvest. And so through my research, what I've learned is there is a lot of work around soil prep, overturning the soil, breaking up the clods of dirt, leveling the field. And then we move into like sowing the field, getting the furrows, the ridges, the beds, getting it ready for the seed. Then you can go into manuring or putting plant waste and animal waste, like fertilizing those seeds in that soil so that it'll grow. But you can't forget about irrigation, and there's different types of irrigation to make sure. In Illinois, I know we have some really, really hot summers. Same in Missouri where I live now, and in Iowa and Nebraska, summer can get brutal. And then they can't just leave it. There has to be some sort of weeding. So the seeds and the new roots that are taking up aren't getting choked out by the weeds, right? So we have to find a system. So it takes all of these things under the iceberg, the things under the water that we don't see before we get to the harvest. And in education, we don't really think about that. We don't think about, we hand people standards, we hand people assessments, and we don't do the deep work, the under the iceberg work that it takes in order to see that harvest and see it truly. And so that's what this work is about. So I want to share with you just an example. Most people aren't brave enough to unpack the standards, or most leaders aren't brave enough to ask us to unpack the standards because it's really tough. But unpacking the standards is the foundation. It is the soil prep. If you don't do this, the rest of this doesn't work out. We don't see the harvest at the highest level. And so we unpack our standards in order to determine explicit learning targets. And then we move into determining in the standard, what do we need to know, understand, be able to do. So what is that declarative and conceptual knowledge that we need to know before we go teach it? And that helps us determine what those implicit learning targets are. When you have all of this, then that's the progression of when you determine success criteria, of when you create progressions. I've added here of when you create assessments, formative and summative, and when you can start writing units or curriculum. If you don't do this work, I can walk in and look at a curriculum and look at assessments, and I can look at just the assessments, and I can look at how they impact. I can look at assessments and determine whether or not they did this work here. And how you write your assessments are how you teach. So if when we're looking at assessments and I'm seeing low-level DOKs and tons of multiple choice, I know we haven't done this work here. And so I have to take us back to that work so that we can do the unpacking standards, explicit targets, know, understand, be able to do implicit targets so that we can determine what success looks like. So we can create assessments that align with the standard that are at high targets and high levels. So we can create progressions for learning, and we can create and write curriculum, and then have I can statements on things like our report cards are up for students to see as maybe what their learning targets are so that they see that. It's when we don't have this foundation that it gets real muddy and confusing. You will be able to talk with a parent and tell them exactly where their child is on a standard and exactly what they need to do to be able to master that standard when you do this work. You'll be able to explain to parents how they can help their child achieve mastery on that standard and what you're going to do at home to support them. So, from my favorite TV show right now, Ted Lasso, I want to take one of my favorite quotes from him. Taking on a challenge is a lot like riding a horse, isn't it? If you're comfortable while you're doing it, you're probably doing it wrong. So I want to remind you of one of my favorite quotes from Douglas Reeves is that when we are uncomfortable, that's when we make the most growth. So think about where am I right now on the progression of unpacking. Where am I in this work? Can you see it very well there? Where am I at here before I get to that tip of the iceberg? And think for a second about a plan that you're going to make. And I want you to quickly jot down that plan. First, I'm going to try this, and then I'm going to try this, and then I'm going to try this. When we come back together, we're actually going to get started on unpacking the standards. Have a great day.